Essentially, yeah, and that's where the freedom of Netflix kind of comes in.
That's where I gotta deviate a little bit from that, because, and this can segue right into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
The main problem I had with S.H.I.E.L.D., which is why I stopped after 3 or 4 episodes in, was because it didn't feel like they were trying to make a show. To me, it felt like they were trying to connect their universes that they've already had on film. So that's where I kind of have to diverge a little bit from what you just said there, Wave, because there's tons of money they could have pumped into that thing to make it what it needed to, because they already had the success of the Marvel Universe behind it.
They didn't want to.
They didn't want to, because that wasn't the vehicle that they wanted to use that show for. Just like, when you guys were going on and on about, all 3 of you going on about how much better season 2 is, and then was it Whedon or Fahey that came out a week after Ultron came out and said, basically.
Oh, he wrote the show off.
The S.H.I.E.L.D. show
was
Whedon. It was Whedon.
Was just to fill in all the plot hole blanks, even from Age of Ultron 2, a year into the show being out. If they're going to treat their own show as a non-show, then why should I care?
That was Whedon's, and I may not agree with a lot of what Whedon said, but at the same time, he ran a few of the early episodes. Mm-hmm. He was not 100% behind everything in S.H.I.E.L.D., and I actually disagree as far as what you were saying about them just using S.H.I.E.L.D. to tie their universe together.
Because that's what they admit they do.
Well, I think
it didn't feel like that to me.
I think there's stuff between what they want to do. Do they want to use it as a vehicle, or do they want to use it as a whole other entity? And they have these episodes here or there, every other episode does the opposite of what they want. So I think they're still just trying to find their footing of what the show should be. I mean, they're definitely. I haven't watched all of season 2, and I haven't even watched all of season 1.
Right.
But from what I've seen, yeah, they're definitely working towards finding where they should be.
I think a lot of it also comes down to when people first started watching season 1.
Yeah.
They were not expecting a S.H.I.E.L.D. show. They were expecting Avengers the TV show.
No, I wasn't expecting that at all.
From what I have seen, reaction-wise, people were mostly expecting, we want superheroes, we want named characters, we want this, we want that. It's if you're actually going to do a series about S.H.I.E.L.D., which it seems they set out to do, and I think they did. I have never had an issue with S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
I never thought about quitting watching it. Loved the series.
Just as a little disclaimer, he's about as fanboy for S.H.I.E.L.D. as I am for Gotham, so take that with a grain of salt.
Maybe not that far, because I don't defend it. I'll admit that, yeah, it's had its problems.
It has problems.
It's definitely has problems. But that's the thing. It's a very different... S.H.I.E.L.D. in and of itself is not a... it's not this thing where you're going to be fighting... you're going to have S.H.I.E.L.D. agents fighting frost giants and fighting this and that. You're going to have them dealing with the people who are so we got our hands on a shitload of Chitauri technology, and we're going to be selling it on the black market. And S.H.I.E.L.D. going, oh, fuck, we got to get our agents in there and get this stuff off the streets. You're dealing with a spy, espionage, police drama type show.
Yeah.
You're not dealing with, it's not your traditional superhero show.
It's not. You're right. My problem with it was just that, the whole Gravitron thing. They brought Gravitron in, and then
we're still waiting for Gravitron
to come
with
back.
it.
And that's kind of my problem with the show is they've got all these elements, but they're not taking them far enough.
Right.
They feel like, or I feel like, they're afraid to take it too far and go too superhero with it.
But then you get into I know you haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But then you get into the Inhumans in season 2.
Well, yeah, and I haven't seen a lot.
The
of
last couple
stuff.
episodes was a full-on war between.
Yeah. So it ended in a place that you like.
Oh fuck yeah! I'm very excited for the next season. They've been hinting majorly at the Secret Warriors.
Yeah, I've heard rumors.
Right down to Daisy /Sky /Quake is going to be running them. Hell yeah.
And then that leads in right into my problem, because where did the Inhumans, that we know were first going to show up in Age of Ultron? So as we're just bouncing around between the different Marvel Universe movies, S.H.I.E.L.D's just going to, borrow bits and pieces of storytelling from those things. Oh yeah, that's where Pietro and the Scarlet Witch came from. It's actually part of these guys.
No.
So
in Age of Ultron, they never say that they were Inhumans. They never refer to the Terrigen crystals. They refer to them as our Hydra science experiments.
I mean, it's left vague enough where they could fill that in
That's
if
what's
they wanted to. But
that's what's going to happen.
If they
We all
want,
know where this
if
is
they
going.
wanted to, they could retroactively, yes, say they're
Listen,
Inhumans.
But they could go their own route with it too.
They could.
This is it's setting up the Inhumans movie.
There we go. So we're setting up another Marvel Universe movie in a TV show. That's my whole problem with all
Which
this.
doesn't come.
So your problem
and the
is
movie
with it
doesn't
being
come out for another
interconnected.
5
No,
years.
my problem is that they're treating the show not as a show, which is why it never got the money, which is why they're never really going to do anything totally on its own with it, because everybody else is going to be making appearances to set up future films.
Not really, because
that's what's happened, though.
that's not what's happened. Because here's the thing: not a single one of these Inhumans, I will almost guarantee it. Not a single one of these Inhumans is going to be a major player in the Inhumans movie. All they did was introduce these are what Inhumans are, with a badass half a season dealing with it.
That's all they have to do, though.
So you're saying that if they mention anything related to any other series,
Prime example. I see your point, but prime example before this goes to another half-an-hour show is the CSI TV show.
Uh-huh.
The
Okay.
CSI was just used also once the actual show started gaining popularity or whatever to just launch other shows. We've had New York, we've had Miami, we've had all this other stuff. Does it make it less of a show that it does that? In my opinion, it kind of does, because you're just going to introduce other things instead of making a whole new show unto itself.
So-
You're just pulling from those characters that everybody knows and loves to launch other series.
So by that logic, Avengers is less of a movie. The original Avengers movie is less of a movie because it's setting up Infinity War. Captain America: The First Avenger is setting up Avengers, less of a movie.
Yes, I will
Why?
be consistent in my critique, because why don't they make
Iron Man 2. I think this is where Iron Man 2 is a lesser movie because it's trying to set up a larger.
It may have
Marvel
tried to
universe.
do too much, but here's the thing:
It's all on how it's handled.
If First Avenger, as it currently is, 100% as it currently sits, like I'm not changing anything with the movie.
Yeah.
If that was its own movie and none of the other Marvel movies existed, you would have no issue saying it's a lesser movie.
It's a good and great movie. Now here the problem is how it's handled. I don't think the Marvel Studios has handled the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show the way they handle their Marvel MCU universe properties. I think when the show was launched, because everything, and this is only because I've watched the first handful of episodes, so maybe a little bit skewed.
Yeah.
Everything was, and we've had this
It's a
discussion.
lot of skewed.
When we had this discussion, it was Stark as Guardian, Hulk tech based. Instead of coming up with
One
something
project.
original,
Yes.
Instead of launching the show with an original idea and thought, they pulled from those other things and said, "Let's go."
Because
with it.
you know what they're trying to appease? They're trying to appease the people that showed up to the show going, "Oh my God, we're going to see Captain America. We're going to see the Hulk. We're going to see Hulk villains and this and that." And it's, you know what? And honestly, though, it made sense though for this universe of, okay, Extremis, Chitauri Metal, Super Soldier Serum, and Gamma Tech. That's what the Centipede. That's what Centipede Project was made of.
Right.
It would make sense that some crazy ass, as we would eventually learn, Hydra Cell would sit there and try and use all of the stuff that has made super soldiers, but has gone wrong. It makes sense for them to sit there and go, well, what if we combine this and this and this? What if we can manufacture it?
That's
and
just lazy to me. I
so,
think
so
you would agree
instead
with
of
me.
coming up with something new,
And I think you would agree with me because you're a huge S.H.I.E.L.D. fan. What if they actually came up with a standalone S.H.I.E.L.D. telling story about S.H.I.E.L.D. agents that has nothing to do with the MCU
it wouldn't work.
universe?
It would
Why
not
wouldn't
work.
it have?
Because
Well, then what designates it as?
a shield. What's the difference between that?
Why-
Why can't I just slap the name Argus on it and suddenly? What would make that difference?
They're S.H.I.E.L.D. because they're coming off of the movie, so that's where people know them. But write a story where they have nothing to do with any of that MCU stuff. Why couldn't they do that? Why couldn't they take on?
They actually do
normal-
a lot of episodes with
Well,
that.
why couldn't they launch the show with that? That's my
They
question.
didn't,
but
know,
you're
they
also-
didn't know what they were doing when they launched.
You're
They didn't know
also
what they were doing.
you're also taking such a minor part of that launch episode.
Well, again, he's only watched the first few episodes.
Right, but he's talking about specifically episode 1. You're talking about the launch, and you're talking about such a minor thing where what does it matter what Project Centipede was actually made of? Why does it matter that they used the pre-existing toys?
Because it lends itself to the idea that they didn't really want this show to be a show on its own.
See, I don't agree with that.
They wanted to connect everything else.
It's part of this greater, larger, wonderful world.
Yeah, I think they had an idea in their head because they gave it to Joss to create, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to create this show, and it'll be there to kind of satiate the thirst of the fans when we're not doing Marvel movies." And I think it was going to be this other show, and then Marvel was like, "Oh, wait a second, Joss. We don't want you to work on that. We wanted you to make movies." And so they pulled him off of that, and I think that left the show in this limbo. And I think that's where the problem started to arise with the show, is that they didn't have a firm foundation of what they were doing right from the get go. And I think it is just now that they're going into season 2, it's helped it along, but that initial startup of not knowing what kind of show you wanted to make.
See, Agent Carter, I say, is something different, a little bit different from that, because
It's a
that
lot
seems
different from that.
that seems to me to be a little bit more thought out. Now, I haven't seen it, but just from looking at it
So enlighten me.
and the premise of it, it seems like, that seems like it could be more of a standalone show, more of an original property that they're
They
doing.
refer
But
to
it has Stark Tech, it has the super soldier.
Then
suit.
I'm going to have all the same problems that I have.
But
if it's handled
Yeah, but how
poorly,
you
if it's handled
it's not
poorly,
handled poorly.
I think that S.H.I.E.L.D. was handled poorly.
That'd
I
be like
don't know
saying
that
you
that-
that'd be
you
like
need
saying
that.
you don't
Just
want
like-
Wayne Industries in Gotham.
Yeah.
Just like in Daredevil, when they started talking about guys in suits and throwing around hammers and stuff like
Because
that.
those exist in
I
that
don't
world.
have a problem with that, because I think the premise going into the show was that those were all peripheral things and not main driving things.
Right, but here's the thing.
That's the problem.
Here's the thing. Matt Murdock, Foggy Nelson, Karen Page, they were all on the peripheral of that. Phil Coulson got stabbed through the friggin' heart by Loki. Agent Ward was boots on the ground dealing with with shit like this. Fitz and Simmons were in a lab. And by the way, I'm not defending Ward. He's a horrible Nazi scumbag piece of shit who should die for killing Victoria Hand and everything else. Melinda May was admittedly sitting behind a desk, but that's because she chose to, because of the whole Calvary incident.
But see, it's okay with Daredevil because Matt's not intrinsically tied to the Avengers like S.H.I.E.L.D. is.
right
Yeah.
now.
Especially because
right now,
the Avengers
but in
are
the-
a S.H.I.E.L.D. unit.
I mean, S.H.I.E.L.D. has so much to do and has so much of a hand, especially in the cinematic universe,
Yeah.
with Avengers, that it's impossible not to pull all the MCU stuff
S.H.I.E.L.D.
out of
created the Avengers in the MCU. And especially with the bombshell that later got dropped about how Hydra has been living within S.H.I.E.L.D. this whole time, that got dropped in Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
With that bombshell, the idea that, hey, they could get their hands on all that shit for Centipede and everything like that.
Mhm.
I mean, that, and here's the thing, if you call it, I'm trying to pull out an actual name from the comics. No, I'm blanking out right now, so I'm gonna go with Wonderflonium from Dr. Horrible. But like, if you said that, well, yeah, the Centipede actually runs on the stuff called Wonderflonium that can do, and lists all the stuff that Mike Peters and the others got enhanced with.
Yeah.
Then you have this thing of, because you're in a larger universe, you have this thing of, well, shit, this exists. How come S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't use Wonderflonium to help fight, Ultron?
Yeah.
But you already have these building blocks here. It's kind of like you've got toys scattered all over a room. And you walk in and you go, well, I could play with these, but someone else played with them. I want new ones. But this story has already started being built. Why completely ignore everything? Why make it so isolated, so not connected to everything?
I guess
you're in a living, breathing world.
I guess I would have liked the MCU to be able to pull from the S.H.I.E.L.D. show
Instead
for
of,
story ideas instead of the other way around.
But why would you
because-
pull from?
The TV show,
The
which
TV
less
show,
people are going to watch,
yeah.
admittedly. Like,
And
there.
it-
for the same reason why Daredevil is a 13-hour movie, because S.H.I.E.L.D. is like what, a 26-hour movie in essence.
Mm-mm.
I know. The structure's completely different.
How many episodes are there?
Well, it doesn't
Well,
matter how many
that's
episodes.
not-
I think
that-
the formula of S.H.I.E.L.D. television show is completely different.
S.H.I.E.L.D.
from
is made to be watched once a week.
Yeah,
Daredevil, what?
Yeah,
if
but you're watching the characters in S.H.I.E.L.D. grow over the course of the season.
Right.
Change.
What we're
Right.
saying with there's a difference
So-
why we're calling S.H.I.E.L.D. a TV show and Daredevil a 13-hour movie.
Yeah.
If you design a Netflix series that drops all at once to be designed as a TV show, where you expect people to sit there and watch one a week and like have space in between to sit there and mull over, you're an idiot. The knee-jerk reaction for a lot of Netflix viewers is I'm a binge a season. Whereas something like S.H.I.E.L.D., yeah, you have space to sit there and think about and sit there and go, oh, cool, that was a little connection to Winter Soldier, or with Winter Soldier's specific case, that was a gigantic ass connection and honestly, it makes more sense for a TV show, which again, less people are going to watch, to be influenced by the movies, which more people are going to watch. It makes more sense for, holy shit, S.H.I.E.L.D. got destroyed. S.H.I.E.L.D. literally got ripped apart. And
I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree, because I am never, ever going to
see
that.
he's shutting me down because he knows I'm making progress.
No, because
here.
I don't want to actually spend another 20 minutes the way we did with Gotham.
Yes,
last
you
week.
do!
It
On
just
your
doesn't make any
premise
sense.
of because everything's connected, it makes it bad. What is going to happen with Batman versus Superman? That's going to tie into the Justice League, which is going to tie into Wonder Woman, which is going to tie into the Flash and Aquaman, and even Suicide Squad. Does that make everything bad?
But with
because of that one movie?
with DC, they don't have a TV component where they're drawing from. They're keeping everything separate, so I think they don't.
Well, no,
they're not even getting into that mess to begin with.
He said Avengers was bad because it tied into everything else. It perpetuated.
No, I said Avengers
everything
could have
else.
been bad if it was handled as poorly as S.H.I.E.L.D. was. That's my difference. That's the caveat. It's like, Marvel is owned by Disney. There's a shit ton of money they could have put into that show, but they didn't.
How much?
They didn't.
There's a shit ton of
But it
money
doesn't make
that,
sense.
that
They just
Disney
took a
can
bath
put
on
into.
Tomorrowland
Yeah,
for
yeah,
$140
okay.
million.
Yes, that's true.
Okay,
I
here's
mean,
my question.
there's
How come
money and
WB
production
didn't
value is no object to them.
How come
They
WB
treated it that way because they knew that this property that they were creating was a hand-me-down for connections that they were missing and plot holes.
Then
that
what's
they're missing
Gotham?
in their show?
Then what's
in their-
Gotham?
in their
How come
MCU?
WB didn't pump millions upon millions more dollars into Gotham to make that a better
Because
show?
it's a Fox show. It's not a WB
Fine, why didn't
show.
Fox do
But
it?
it's
Because
Fox has the
it's
money.
Because it was handled poorly. And in comparison, though, I think that the Gotham show looked better than the episodes I saw of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Which I will 100% disagree with. But on the similar note, though,
It's
TV
like almost
shows
no-brainer.
don't have movie budgets. It's just
Well, yeah,
it
that's
is
what I think.
accepted.
I mean, they're not
You're
gonna
not going to get
pour-
the return.
for example.
You still have to get a return.
For
Yeah.
example, Disney owns ABC, who puts out S.H.I.E.L.D. and all
S.H.I.E.L.D., yeah.
those. They also own Once Upon a Time. Probably right around the same budget, same effects. Terrible special effects compared to a Disney movie.
Right.
I'm not
Why
saying
don't
that
they
they have
pump
to be
money
the
into
same.
that? Because
I'm not
that
saying
is-
they have to be the same. I'm saying they don't have to look bad for TV. That's what I'm saying.
Once Upon a Time is a TV show.
That's all I'm
It
saying.
still has.
Yeah, but what's
Well, see,
What's
if they pump,
good
if
for
they
TV
pump too
compared
much
to what
money
they were
into
doing?
it, they might as well just be making a feature length. I think that's why. That's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why they don't put money into it is because
you still have to make money off
You
it.
still have to make money off it, and then you have to find the line of, well, if we're going to be spending this much money on this project, why don't we just do something other than a cheap TV show, or vice versa?
You're
you know,
not
it
going to
goes-
get the
it
same
goes
return
same.
in a TV show that you would in a movie.
I mean,
Not
it's-
even close.
Well, then
we're
here's-
just gonna have to agree to disagree.
Well, my also one of my issues with S.H.I.E.L.D. is like, okay, so you don't spend the money because if you're going to be taking risks with a TV show, you don't want to be blowing your money. But here's my problem: I don't feel that S.H.I.E.L.D. is taking enough risks. At least not in the first season. Again,
First half of season
Yeah,
one. Come
yeah.
on, give me that one at least.
That's true. They did start the course correct towards the end of season one,
Like I'll acknowledge that
and it started to
most
look
people
better.
liked it from the second half of season one on.
Yeah.
Like I said, personally, I loved it from the beginning because I was there just for S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right.
I was there for let's do S.H.I.E.L.D. operations, and to me, every single one of those episodes felt like a S.H.I.E.L.D. op.
It really,
And that was cool.
S.H.I.E.L.D. is doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're
Cool
policing-
gadgets and policing the world.
They're
and,
policing the world. They're policing the unknowns of the world. What is it? 87?
084.
084. The unknowns of the world. That's exactly what they're doing. They're taking care of the supers
Right.
Without showing any of the supers.
without showing
No,
any of the supers.
not showing many of the supers.
Yeah.
Deathlock.
Oh, season two. They really went. They finally said fuck it. So far as I could tell,
They did. Yeah.
they
That's what
said fuck it. Fine, people want superpowers. We'll give them superpowers,
Yeah.
and that's where we got stuff like Crusher Creel, who oh my god, the Absorbing Man looked amazing, and like he had his ball and chain for like 5 seconds, but he had his friggin' ball and chain. And it was so cool.
Yeah.
But and then you had the Inhumans showing up. What's up?
Nothing.
You need a handle. What's your screen name?
What are you
awesome
eating?
Chick.
All right, so we got Awesome Chick,
What is it?
82
Sour
here.
chicken from Weapon.
Oh yeah.
What do you got?
That's the second.
Now been 82.
That's the second reference to Chinese food. I think that seals the deal. I'm getting it tonight.
It's an omen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.